the Harbir Singh podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is a big privilege for me because this is one that I've been waiting for a long time. This is Rocky Purewal on today's podcast. Before we go any further, do comment, and do share this because he's got a lot of experience, he's got a lot of knowledge, and we're privileged to have his time. He's a new father, so this is a true blessing. So without before we go any further, can you give us a brief introduction, please, Rock, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Rocky Purewal. I'm a doctor in Canada currently. I'm working in a small community in Perth, so it's kind of like a small little rural country town. I've been training, so I did medicine. I've had about 8, 9, 10 years of training. And then now I work as a family doctor as well as an emergency medicine doctor in that little town.
Oh, wow. Is that far from where you're based?
It's about a 35-minute drive. So it's kind of a small little community, and a lot of the doctors there, if you're doing family medicine, you also work in the hospital. So it gives you kind of a breadth of, doing everything.
Because that must be very different going from, emergency department to family medicine.
Yes. Yeah, it ends up being, you see a lot more in an emergency department. You have to be a lot quicker. I find. So it's tough to kind of balance that at times.
Yeah. The day must go by fast.
Yeah, some days. Some days do, and then some days you're in panic mode. So for the most part, luckily we've been pretty good up there.
That's amazing. So I obviously, I had the privilege to know you for a long time, and you've come at it from quite a unique angle because you've done lots of stuff. You've trained as a martial artist. You've done personal training. You've always had a focus in health. So in terms of your own training journey, like your transformation was incredible. I'll definitely link to it in the description box. But can you tell us about what that training journey was like from what you used to be like to getting into bodybuilding?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you some credit for how it started because I think you got me into working out originally when we were kids. So I think I would see you do it, and then I thought, this is something I want to try. And then once you started doing it, my body started feeling better, and I started feeling stronger and faster. And I think that's where it all came from. I think I started, so fitness-wise, I think the first thing that I started doing was I always played soccer growing up. So that was kind of my endurance kind of training. But I didn't really know it at the time. It was just something fun to do. And from there, I did, my parents put me in karate. And then that kind of branched into like karate/kickboxing. And as part of those classes, we would, that's where I kind of got into like, doing push-ups and doing sit-ups during every class and doing some cardio work and, working on some strength training. So I think that's where it all came from. From there, I started getting into weights probably kind of in high school time, and where you're looking at all these celebrities and athletes that do it and you want to kind of look like them. So you start following that, but you have no idea what you're doing. So you just kind of go into the gym. I remember kind of looking around and seeing what other people were doing and trying to copy that, just with much lighter weights. So I think that's where it started, but didn't really take off till I was, I think, in university and actually like asking people questions, like trainers or people that looked like they knew what they were doing. And, luckily I think the gym atmosphere has been pretty kind to me growing up. So I've never had any negative experiences there. Everyone's been very welcoming and, eager to teach and eager to have me learn or learn from them. So I think that's where I got more comfortable in there. I was definitely nervous to start, and I think most people will be. But I think if you just go ahead and ask that question, once you just start talking to people, you find out it's actually a really communal place to be. I found with most gyms, and I've been to a lot of them. Yeah.
So what interests me is that a lot of people are probably the casual gym goers. They probably have a similar background. They see people who train and they think, I want to get fitter. I want to, feel better in my skin. So they start working out. But I mean, they don't get to your level. So was there a point, like something that happened that there was a kind of impetus to go from being the casual kind of weekend warrior gym goer to, doing that serious transformation that you did?
Yeah, so I think it started when I got a job as a personal trainer. So fitness was always a big part. So after I graduated from university, so in Canada we do university first, so it's about a 4-year program, and then I applied to med school. So there's no like transition; you have to apply to get in. I didn't get in on my first try in med school, so I had a year off to basically, I was working or doing nothing. So I got a job as a personal trainer. And then from there, I think I learned more about consistency. Whereas before I was just kind of, like you said, a weekend warrior going mostly on weekends or like once a week at night or something after work. Um, Whereas as a trainer, I felt like I couldn't tell my clients to do something. Whereas I'm telling someone to come in 2-3 times a week or 4 times a week, and I'm not doing it myself. I felt, I didn't want to be like I don't know how to say it, like a fraud essentially. So if I told my client to do something, I always had to do that amount or more, to say, okay, I want you to come in 3 times a week. And they're like, how many times do you come in? I was like 5, because now I have room to make you go up if you need to. Right. So, that's where I think some of the consistency came. And, when you surround yourself with people like that, so, all my friends and colleagues, they were trainers too. So we would all have that mentality. And I think that was important too. Everyone was kind of keeping you accountable. Like if I didn't train on a Tuesday, someone's like, why aren't you training? And I'd say, oh, I forgot my shoes, and like, borrow mine. So I think there was a mentality there of, do it more consistently. I think you'll get the results better instead of going all out for like a couple days. I didn't have to go all out because I was just doing it so frequently.
Yeah, I guess you kind of threw yourself in the deep end. Like being a personal trainer, like you said, you can't be a hypocrite and be obese and be sedentary. You have to look the part. So it forced.
Yeah. So that I think forced some consistency into me. I think that the difference between that, so it was consistent, but it wasn't really training to like a maximum effort. I think that came when I got into medical school. And I was in good shape when I got into medical school. So, the first year I got in, I was very excited. And I think someone I worked with said, oh, like, there goes your fitness. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to keep it up in medical school. And I think that just kind of set a fire in my head. And I said, oh, yeah, watch this. And it was that year where I actually kind of competed. It was my first year of medical school where I started my bodybuilding kind of process.
Wow. And I've noticed that about you. You're kind of like, if someone says you can't do something, you'll show them.
Yeah, it's I don't know where it came from, but it's like an internal, like, I need to prove you wrong now. And that's kind of where what led into bodybuilding. I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you went from kind of, like you said, relatively fit and healthy and in good shape to like on stage, which is again another massive leap. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, so that was, I can't say, I got to give some shout out to my wife here, because I don't think I could have done it without her. So at the same time I was training, she also decided to do a competition. So we were going to do the same competition together. And I had one of the trainers I worked with previously, they trained. So she was an athlete that I think was like a IFBB pro, like international bodybuilding, like federation, an athlete part of them. And so I asked them if they could give us some guidance and help. And so that's kind of what brought me to that level.
What was the commitment like? I know what your diet was like, because I stayed in terms of your training. How many hours was that taking up in food prep?
Yeah, so I honestly, I thought it would take up a lot more. When I asked them about it, I thought I would be in there like 2-3. You look online, you look at these magazines and stuff, and everyone's always like, oh, they're doing 2 a days, and this person's doing like The Rock's in the gym for 4 hours. I don't think he's in the gym for that long. I mean, maybe that's the one exception, but I think most athletes and celebrities that you see, probably not as long as you think. I think it's more of just the consistent effort over time. And that's kind of what it was. So it was training wise, I think I was in there probably 4 times a week. So I would do maybe like Monday, Tuesday, have a rest day on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then probably take it easy on Saturday, Sunday, or just do like a yoga class or just some core on the weekend. But I'd probably have like 2 days to just rest and relax. in the week. So it wasn't a 7-day process for sure. It wasn't like 7 days a week. It wasn't barely even 5 days a week. It was probably gathering up to 5 days towards the end of competition, but not 5 days at maximum effort. There was always like a recovery day in there.
And how many hours were you training for?
I would do my workout. So because I was in med school, I still had kind of quite a heavy academic load to maintain. And so originally, so going into med school, I wasn't really a morning person per se, but I found that to keep my training going, I had to almost become one. And so I would find after my medical school, like if I'd go during the day, it was 8 hours of class. And if you wait till the end of class to start training, I was just exhausted, mentally, physically. I just wanted to go home and kind of just relax or study. So I started waking up extra early. I was up around 5:30 a.m., which was too early for most, but for me, that was a big change. And then I'd go to the gym first thing. So I wouldn't eat. I'd go to the gym kind of fasted. And then I would have a decent sized breakfast when I got home, and then go to med school. And then I'd have all my meal prep I would do usually on Sundays. So most of my lunches and dinners were already planned out. I didn't have to think about that. I thought that was pretty easy to maintain. And then, yeah, that's how I kind of would organize it.
And with competition, you won your first competition, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a true Rocky story, isn't it? Coming up the couch.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. I remember some of the Rocky songs were on my soundtrack too when I'd go for jogs, and I would do the same thing. I'd do the shadow box when you're jogging, and then someone would walk by and be like, "Oh shit, sorry." Like, I'm not trying to fight you guys. I'm just kind of mimicking this. Just give me some motivation. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then now you're on a new transformation journey with having a kid. What's that like, going from fairly kind of reasonable, independent life and going from that to having a kid who's reliant on you, or you're working full time? So how do you juggle that? Have you got any tips for new dads?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for new dads, I mean, it's going to be different for everyone, but I think you got to be easy on yourself too. I think a lot of times you try to focus so much on, this kid needs to be perfect, and why aren't they eating yet? And, are we doing everything we need to? Why is this rash here? Why haven't they pooped in the day? I think it becomes easy to kind of micromanage everything for your kids. But I remember I was working with a pediatrician once, and they told me some useful advice, I thought, at the time. And they say, kids, when they're born, like instinctively, they want to stay alive. They're not doing things that are gonna lead to bad consequences. Like if a kid's coughing, like it's for a reason. They're gonna try to get something out. So like let them do that stuff. And if you're getting a really fever and if the kid's really sick, then sure, get them checked out. But you don't have to panic at every turn. And I think just relaxing a little bit and understanding that there's going to be scratches, there's going to be cuts and stuff, maybe some bruises. I think that gives you kind of some time to focus on yourself too, and don't necessarily put aside all of your mental health and well-being or your physical well-being. You can find ways to do it at home too. So we had Ella kind of mid-pandemic, so I couldn't really go to the gym regardless. Everything was shut down. So what I would tend to do is, like when she was napping, kids nap a lot, which I didn't know. But when you have originally the first couple of months, she'd sleep all the time. So when she was sleeping upstairs, I would just do a mini workout downstairs with like resistance bands and light weights and push-ups, a lot of body weight stuff, just to kind of maintain some of that shape.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've really worked with what you had, because those aren't, like you said, there was no way you could have trained. You've got a newborn,
no.
But these commitments, but you still managed to find a way to train, which shows that your health is important to you. It wasn't just for competition. You're keen on like looking after yourself.
Yeah, and I find after a while when you start doing it, your body just feels better after a workout. It could be anything, like even going for a walk. You'll just feel more energized. The fresh air. Doing a couple of squats, your legs will start feeling a bit stronger, steady. won't get as much back pain. So I think a lot of that was, my body telling me you need to move or do something, and then you'll feel less lethargic and like blah.
So how do you balance it all? Because you've got all of these conflicting time constraints, and then how do you still manage to eat relatively healthy? Because you've never ballooned in terms of your weight after competition, which I see with a lot of people. So what's your kind of secret to managing to keep on top of this stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of ballooning I'll talk to that one first, after the competition. So that was something I chatted with my trainer about at the time. And it was all about kind of, you get that cheat day. So the day we won the competition, I went to town. I had burgers, I had fries, like pizza, all the stuff that I didn't have for so long. But that was one day. And then the next day I was mostly still similar to the competition food, with an additional, let's say, if I was having 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, now it was 2. And then the following week, instead of like egg whites, I introduced like 1 egg, like a whole egg. And then the next week, I can introduce a piece of bread again. So it's kind of a slow, gradual process. And then eventually, you have the freedom to eat what you want. But if you do it too fast, then it does balloon on you. In terms of the food, I think my advice to people would be to not focus necessarily on what you're not eating. So don't say like, oh, I think if you're on a diet and you say, I can't eat that, or, I'm on a diet, I can't have like that donut or that cookie. You already kind of pigeonhole into like I'm in a cage thing and I can't have this, and you're limiting that. And, as a human, you're going to want to bust out of that cage at some point, probably at night, and have like a dozen cookies and ice cream and everything like that. So to me, it was more of what I am eating. So instead of, being tempted by a cookie or donut or whatever the dessert or something was, because for me, it's a sweet tooth. I would say I'm eating a salad. So I have to eat the salad. And then I have to eat an apple. And then I have to eat this chicken and rice, or then I have to eat, this oatmeal. And I thought when I'm eating those things, like at, those time intervals, I don't have the urge to have a donut or cookie because I'm just full. So you don't feel like you need it as much. You're still satisfied, and you're still getting like my sweet. We're satisfied with just some fruit instead. So like berries, half a banana, things like that. Stuff that still gives you the vitamins, but not necessarily all of the processed sugar. And a big thing for me was also not buying it. So if I went to the grocery store, I went with like a budget of, this is usually how much it costs me to get all of these things, and I can't spend more than that. So not a single thing I could spend more. But imagine that like I didn't have that money in my account, and as a med student I really didn't. But if you go with it that way, you'll save money, you'll start losing weight, you'll start seeing the impact too. And I think it's easier that way. You're not saying I can't do this, it's you don't really want to or have to.
Wow. Would you say you're a disciplined person?
At time, I don't know if I'm a disciplined person, but I think I can easily put myself into routine. And so if I have a routine, I'm someone that I think my mindset is strong enough to say, I'm not going to break that. And some days you will. And I think understanding that too. So as a disciplined or as someone like that's following routine, you have to understand that sometimes it's going to break. And don't beat yourself up for that, and don't just collapse and go back to your old ways for that. You just do the same thing the next day. So there were times, even during competition, where it was just awkward to not have food or something. Like a doctor would take you out for dinner and say, you did such a good job in this rotation. I hear we got you like a brownie, and I'd be like, oh no. And sometimes I had to say no, and that was awkward, or I would just take a couple bites, and not be too hard on myself. I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's one day. Tomorrow I get back to the same routine. I don't punish myself for it. I don't say now I have to go for, like a 5-mile jog. I just say, okay, that was one day, back to the same routine tomorrow. I'm not going extra. I'm not going harder. It's the same thing. It was one little thing. We'll be okay.
That's amazing. Yeah, you sound incredibly disciplined. It's very inspiring. But yeah, I can see how routines can enforce or enable that. If you've got a strong routine, then you're just by going through the motions, you're getting through the things that you want to get through. You're making progress towards your goal. In terms of, I wanted to ask you about Corona, and there's a lot of misconceptions, particularly in the community, or a lot of conceptions around different things around coronavirus. And there's a new variant at the moment in the UK, so they're looking at whether they're reinforcing masks again, and they're looking at what they do next in terms of travel bans and all that kind of stuff. So what's your take on vaccines and all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to get too political with this. So I think, I mean, coronavirus in general has been around for a while. It's this specific variant, so the COVID-19 one they discovered in 2019. That's why it's named that. I think the problem with it was just a lot more lethal, a lot more infectious than typical coronaviruses tend to be. The vaccine rollout's been quite impressive with how fast they were able to develop that. And what I tell people sometimes of this, some people are very skeptical of, the speed of this, but this is also something you have to realize was worldwide kind of a crisis. So this was the first time you had kind of the world's doctors and scientists and top minds kind of coming together and saying, we all need to solve this. This wasn't just like an isolated event. So probably the first time in our history that you could get all of this done. You were able to kind of, and they weren't necessarily like bypassing any safeguards. It was just, you needed to do this. These trials needed to happen quicker. So they still did randomized trials. They still did like all of the work that they needed to. They just got a light to do it quicker than typically, where it would have to go through, they'd say, you'll start the trial next year. Just because it's going to wait. It still had ethics approvals. It had all of that stuff. And overall, I think, vaccine in general have been pretty safe. There's been, I think the media has kind of distorted some of it in terms of what experiences people are having. And I think one thing I tell people is anytime you hear of a major side effect from a vaccine, you need to know the whole story. You need to know what that person has medically in their past. It's usually not just like a healthy everyday person that just got a vaccine, then suddenly, boom, something happened. A lot of times they have like some immune conditions. They have lung issues at baseline. They've had clots in the past. Maybe they're smokers. Maybe they're drinkers. Maybe there's something else going on in their lifestyles. Maybe they've had previous surgery. So without having all of that medical data, it's easy to jump to a conclusion of, oh, this vaccine causes that. Or this vaccine might do that. It's more complex than that.
And is there anything we can do to build our immunity, or to kind of? I was actually, I don't know if you follow UFC, but the head of UFC, Dana White, he posted today that he's following Joe Rogan's protocol on having coronavirus. So he said he woke up, couldn't smell anything, phoned Joe Rogan, and he told him to, I think, take IV vitamins, take this whole protocol. And he said he's been doing that, and he said he's been making dramatic recovery. But in your experience, is there anything anyone can do kind of maybe pre-COVID, and then if they have it, to help them recover faster or reduce their chances of getting it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think pre-COVID, like trying not to get it, I think the biggest thing would be, wearing the mask if you're too close in proximity with others that, not in your bubble. Routine hand washing, and washing your hands well and properly, not just like a little squirt. I always see people do like a tiny squirt of like something and they just kind of rub it. You got to like really thoroughly get in between your fingers, get on the backs of your fingers. The thumb's always forgotten. Everyone kind of washes the palm of their hand and just forgets to kind of go up the thumb. The thumb is going to touch the most with your index finger. So trying to really clean the hands properly. And maintaining the social distance if you're unsure of someone, especially if you're coughing and stuff. If you have symptoms, try not to be around too many people, to try to not spread it. Especially if it's like fever and cough tends to be the big one. In terms of once you have COVID, it's tough to say. A lot of the cases I've seen have been quite mild. Fortunately, there are some in the ICU. The ones that I've seen in the ICU were people who had previous like severe lung conditions, things like COPD, which is an obstructive lung disease that's from kind of years of smoking, people with lung cancers, people with kind of autoimmune conditions, which kind of made their immune system go into hyperdrive. Those are the only ones I've actually seen in ICU. I've never seen in kind of someone with no medical condition in ICU or in a hospital setting.
And is there anything like you and I can do to reduce our chances of getting COVID or getting even influenza in terms of our immunity and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I think vaccines are a big part of that. So I think getting your shots, I think boosters are going to be part of our lives soon. They're already starting. So I don't know what it's like in the UK, but Canada's and the States have introduced COVID boosters. So I think after 6 months from your second dose of vaccine, you're eligible to get another one. And it's my anticipation is that this becomes more of kind of like the flu virus, where there's a season of it, and you go and get your flu shot or you go and get your COVID shot. But if you get the virus, it's not as deadly, not as lethal. And that was the goal. The goal wasn't to stop COVID entirely. I don't think that's going to happen. Because viruses, inherently will keep mutating. So there's always going to be some strain that kind of breaks through. But if that strain isn't as lethal, if it's not killing people, if it's not, making them end up in hospitals or ICUs, then our medical system can manage it. If you get COVID and you're just at home sick and for a couple of days and then you go back to normal, that's fine. That's the typical progression of most cases of this at this point. And I think that's kind of a testament to, as a community, everyone, following some of these rules, getting vaccinated, scientific studies, having these vaccines, having this hand washing and the masks. I think it made a big difference because you don't know what would have happened originally if you just didn't follow any of those guidelines.
And what about like exercise, sleep, like vitamins or anything like that? Do you know, like?
Yeah, so from a scientific standpoint, I don't think anything's been studied enough. I don't think long enough to say that one specific thing will do that. I don't think there's like specific vitamins. I won't speak on Joe Rogan's behalf here on what he was telling Dana White to do. But in general, I think, people will start feeling better generally over time. It's the same thing with most viruses and flu. So whether you're having 40 oranges or not, you're probably going to start feeling better the next day and the next day. And it's what you can attribute it to what you eat. But I think if you didn't have that stuff, you'd probably still feel a bit better. Eating healthy is always a decent option, though. It's not like, having fruits and vegetables is going to make you feel worse. And that's not the case. So I think it's definitely a good idea to have some of that stuff in because it'll help boost your immune system a little bit. Exercise is always good, but if your lungs really can't take it, don't push yourself too far. I don't think there's like a specific food or vitamin C or D or something that I would recommend. I think they studied vitamin D for a bit. There was no conclusive evidence, but it might help. Yeah,
I did read something about that. But like you said, I guess once you've got something that's viral, there's not much. It's not so much about you as an individual. That's going to play some part, but you're still going to have to go through the motions of your body building its immunity to that variant. You're still going to get sick, but probably to a lesser degree, depending on so many factors like genetics and immunity and all of that kind of stuff. But I think that's really interesting because there was a big issue. They said there's 2 pandemics in the UK anyway. They said there's one of the coronavirus and the second of misinformation, particularly in BAME, Black and ethnic minority groups. Some people believing that there's chips, like, Bill Gates in the vaccine, and some people believe there's like baby parts in there, so it's not halal, and lots of different things. Some people believing there's meat in there, so it's not vegetarian, and so it's kind of there's a lot of information out there, and I think it's difficult to know sometimes about who to believe or what the right thing to do is. And like you said, there might be an anecdote around someone getting sick from the vaccine, and that's probably what gets in terms of word of mouth gets passed around, and so it can scare some people. But Yeah, but I think we're lucky to live in the UK, to live in Canada, to live in countries that don't have access to the vaccine. Because if you look at, they're calling it an apartheid of availability, and how some nations, like African nations in particular, don't have the access or availability that we have, and how people are really suffering.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you look at some of the developing countries with no vaccines, the mortality rate is just way higher, way higher. So I really hope that we get some vaccines out there too soon.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I'm not going to keep you, because I know you've got a beautiful baby who wants time with her dad as well. So if anyone has any questions, I will definitely put all of your details in, so they can look in the description box below. They can follow you on Instagram. Is that the best place to get in touch or to follow you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on Instagram much anymore. I'm not on much social media in general, but I still have it. So occasionally I will look, and yeah, I'll be happy to answer a couple questions on messengers on Instagram. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't an invitation for people to ask you for medical advice. It's just in case they want to follow you and see your journey and see some of your photos. I really like I like the video that you did on benching 100 kg, which I don't know what that is in pounds, but I was really impressed, because
I think that was like 235 or something, and I'm a pretty small guy, so that was a lot for me.
So you're genetically very gifted then. It's not simply just training then, because that's quite atypical.
Yeah, I mean, don't tell my dad that, but it'll get to his head.
You can say it's from the other side of the family.
Yeah. yeah, that was different. I think I trained pretty hard for that. And it's all about technique, I found, for improving those big lifts. You got to have the proper technique. I must have filmed myself every single time I was lifting, and I'd get people to look at it and shape it. So I think that's how I got those big lifts. Yeah, you can see some of those on the page.
That's amazing. And does your dad still call you, does he still call himself your coach?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, he'll call himself my coach. He looks quite young still. I mean, he dyes his hair, but yeah, sometimes it goes my brother or something, or my uncle. He just doesn't want to age himself, which is good for him. He's in good shape too. So
yeah,
maybe it is partly genetics. I'll give him some credit for that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you so much for your time, Rock.
No problem. Thanks for having me.